Fortunately, I've had some experience on Holston. I rode it a few times. I fished it a few times, not a ton, but a few. The sections that I fished the scenery was beautiful. I mean, just like you want in some places, and some maybe not so much. But I remember there are some fair-sized drops, or some big boulders, or some rocks, or some gravel that I can remember. And I know there are some one in particular, long flat that I really wish I would have had a motor. But we're talking today about the Holston, not the South Holston, but the Holston. I like to call it the Holston proper. I don't know where I got that term from, but anyway, it's the Holston River. So with that in mind, Jeff, can we start by you telling us about the river itself?
I would be happy to. The Holston River below Cherokee Dam is divided into two primary sections, the upper 19 miles and then what I call the rest of it. The upper 19 miles are managed specifically for trout. We get stocked rainbows and brown trout. It fishes really well from November through, say, June. It's a warm water fishery, and of course, we only get cold water so long before we're out. Cherokee Lake isn't really deep compared to other lakes that we have, so we're constantly fighting warm water in that river. And of course, the lower 30 miles, 35 miles of that river are phenomenal smallmouth fishery. So it's roughly 52 to 53 miles from the dam to where the French Broad and the Holston meet to form the headwaters of the Tennessee.
So is the upper 19, where is that from the dam down? How to what mark down there, 19 miles down? Is there a mark down there that we would know? Or
there is. So you've got the dam, and then you've got three public accesses on the river, and that kind of divides it into two sections. There is a third one. I'll start from the dam and kind of work my way down. From the dam to about River Mile 7, somewhere between River Mile 6 and 7, you have it's a very crappy, nasty put in we call the slide or the mud ramp at Tampico. There's not a lot of place to park there. I don't like getting clients in and out of the boats there, so I typically bypass that, and I run the long stretch between the dam and Indian Cave. That is a 12-mile section of river, and it takes a significant amount of time to get down it. Lots of dead water, but there is some really exceptional fishing water in between those two access points.
Yeah.
From Indian Cave, your next public access is called Nance's Ferry. And TWRA does a pretty good job of maintaining it. It's a big gravel parking lot. It's got one really nice concrete ramp, and it's got one kind of crappy gravel ramp. But you can definitely get a boat in and out of there. So the fishing between the two is probably, if you're really chasing dry fly caddis bites, or you're chasing dry fly bites in particular, it offers some of the best riffle water that we've got in mass. And it also offers really good streamer and nymph water. So you can do a lot over that span of those two stretches.
Now, I remember Indian Cave is where we put in. And at the time, it's been a while. I hadn't been over there in forever, it feels like. But the ramp, if I remember right, kind of like paralleled the river as you went down it. It had a turn that kind of turned toward the bottom, and it was the ruts they felt like they were over my head. I know they weren't over my head, but they sure felt like they were big ruts. And we managed to get a couple boats down there. Thankfully, we had 4-wheel drives, and at the time you had to have them. I don't know if it's any different now, but at the time it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it hasn't gotten much better. So Indian Cave, man, there's a ton of history right there. It's actually listed in historic places. The story that I first got when I was new to a shuttle driver was that there was a skeleton found in the cave, and the shuttle driver told me it was a saber-toothed cat skeleton. And of course, the whole of Holston watershed from the North and South Fork all the way down into Knoxville is ate up with American Indian history. And so it turns out it wasn't a saber-toothed cat. It was actually an Indian skeleton that was found in there that was estimated to be around 3,000 years old.
Huh.
It was kind of a fascinating little turn of events. There's a huge, there's an anthropology department at UT, and they are the ones that went in and actually salvaged it after it was found. And so, but that was a true statement. And then the next thing that was kind of neat is there's a ton of hieroglyphics still in the cave. It's obviously fallen into disrepair. At one point in time, there was an actual restaurant there and a gift shop, and they did cave tours, and they had a big campground up top. It was really, really fascinating. I looked into a little bit about the kind of the history of the name of the river. And so the Holston, as I said, was significant to the Cherokee people. They inhabited that area from the Tri-Cities all the way through down into the whole valley there. And so at one point in time, the Cherokee Indians, they actually called it the Hogahegie River. And I had never heard that term.
Yeah, neither.
So once it was discovered, early French explorers, they named it obviously the Cherokee River due to the indigenous people on it. And then, of course, during colonial times, there was an explorer named Stephen Holston, and he was the very first settler. And it was in the northeastern part of the watershed. The watershed actually drains Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina, and Eastern Tennessee. You've got the North Fork and the South Fork, the Middle Fork that all come together in Kingsport to form what is called the Holston proper. That's the headwaters to Cherokee Lake. And then you have Cherokee Dam. And then, of course, we're actually fishing below Cherokee Dam. So we're really close to the whole of Knoxville compared to the other areas, which are in the Tri-Cities. But the Indian history is there, and it's fascinating. I can't go on and on about it, but you can research it. There is a ton of history about it. Everything from the Trail of Tears to the Treaty of the Holston in 1791, which was another kind of a fascinating little, and it shaped the relationships between the government and the Indians at the time. But this is about fishing. This isn't about Indian history.
Yeah, true. But I like to know some history about the water that, every little bit you can learn kind of, it builds the story, not just in the podcast, but your fishing story. That's why I like to review the history before we get into the show introduction. So let's kick this thing off. From high atop the world headquarters of Southeastern Fly, this is the Southeastern Fly podcast. Thanks for joining us. Feel free to share this with your friends and your fishing partners. Hit the like, click the follow, sign up for this newsletter, and get a jump on upcoming events. And it is available in the show notes wherever you're listening to this podcast. So who is our guest today on this episode about the Holston River? He lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've spent a fair number of hours on a boat with him. We fished in blazing hot conditions, and we've survived some torrential downpours, and we actually lived through a lightning storm just the other day. I thought that was pretty fun. We caught some nice trout in the process. You can find him at sharpfly.com. Please welcome to the Southeastern Fly podcast, Captain Jeff Sharp. Jeff, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So me and you and Corey spent just the other day, it feels like it's been about a week ago, but it was actually just a few days ago, waiting out a lightning storm. And then the fog came in after the lightning and the rain all kind of went away. The fog came in and the fish started looking up, and that was a really, really good day. But anyway, so we go back a little bit. Jeff is a blast to fish with, and just a no pun intended, but a really sharp guy. That didn't mean to even say that, but so you've provided us what I feel like is and I've been there, so maybe I'm biased and I kind of fill in some blanks, but it's a pretty good understanding of the tailwater of the Holston itself. And back whenever I fished it, we fished it and we caught trout and smallmouth. We mostly nymphed at the time, but I remember specifically getting some streamer action in and moving some somewhat bigger fish. It was kind of early in the year, if I remember, it might have been April or so. And we threw caddis because there was a rumor of a caddis hatch up there. And That's all I had heard up until that time is just how epic that caddis hatch is, and how many there are and how great it is to fish. But I also understand that they can be finicky. I don't know that we saw more than a handful of caddis that day, but I've always wanted to go back and do that, or those days. I say that day is a few days, and we just didn't run into it. And I don't know that it was over. I know it had started because I talked to a guide up there, friend of mine, and I said, "Hey," he said, "Are you fishing the caddis hatch?" I was like, "I don't know. I've heard of it, but I don't know if we're hitting it." He said, "Oh, they're just all over. It's going to be, an epic day." And then for 3 days, I don't know that we saw 20 caddis flies, which apparently was we just hit it at the wrong time. I don't know, but so I'm anxious to learn a little bit more about it. So tell us about the caddis hatch.
The Holston has several caddis hatches. We normally start seeing our caddis when the water temps get somewhere between, say, the high 40s and low 50s. I know last year we saw them second week of March. This year it was the second week of April. So your timing can vary. We carry a lot of 14s, 16s, 18s, and even 20s just to match these guys, and carry them in 3 to 4 different colors. I really like olives and tans. I do carry some blacks and some cinnamons. It's a great hatch, and when they are hatching, it's probably one of the most prolific caddis hatches that we have, at least in the eastern Tennessee area.
When I went there, I fished a lot of the Smokies, and I had elk hair caddis, of course. And I felt like there were some similar waters on the Holston as there was in the Smokies, like the longer glides and that sort of thing in the Smokies. So I just fished that elk hair caddis, and I don't think we ever even really got a good hard look on it, probably. But so, what do you think about patterns, caddis patterns, and that sort of thing? Is that something that matters, or is it just like pick your poison and go for it?
No, they get really picky. One thing I've kind of figured out, they really like the emergers and they really feed on the nymphs. Okay. As far as patterns go, I throw 4 primary dries. I love the CDC caddis. It's a simple pattern to tie. And once again, olives, tans, those are my 2 primary colors, and I'll tie them in 14s, 16s, and 18s. It's a quick, simple, easy little fly to tie. X caddis is also a great caddis pattern or imitation up there. I really, really like just a standard elk hair, as you had mentioned. That's also a really good caddis pattern up there. And then the next one I really like to throw is kind of a mix of a more of an emerger slash dry. It can be seen as a dry, but it's an iris caddis or an Irish caddis, what some people call them, a loop wing caddis. And that works really, really well. When the fish really, really start to get picky, I find if you downsize your dry, run super light tippets and
Yeah.
super long leaders. So I'm building out from a 9-foot 4X leader, typically down to 5X mono, and total length you're looking. I like to add a minimum of 3 to 4 feet to that. So a solid 12 to 13 feet in separation between your fly line and your actual fly itself really does help pick those fish up.
So they are pretty spooky. They are spooked off the fly line then.
Man, when we started fishing this thing, there wasn't a lot of people, and those trout sure were golden. As we have progressed in our career, I'm not going to say how old I am, but I ain't a spring chicken. They're getting beaten in the head a lot, We're seeing a lot of pressure. It's at intervals, man. I mean, I hate to say it. I've been drift boat number 13 down the river before. And so, it's a lot, especially as of late. Does it hurt the fishery? No, it hadn't. We still got great fishing. We still got great fish. So you pick your times, you fish during the week when not a lot of other people are there, and that'll help a ton too. But, going back to fly patterns, when I have been having troubles getting, especially folks who maybe can't cast quite as well, one thing that I'm doing a lot of is I'm dropping a salt tackle emergers off the back of my caddis.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
And that has helped in a lot of situations. And I remember the first time I ever told a customer, just let it swing. he let it swing, and of course the emerger come up through the column and a fish pop it. And of course he set the hook, popped the fly off, and I got to retie it. But hey, that's okay. We accomplished, you know.
One of the things that Rocky told me a long time ago was to skitter the caddis. And then I had dropped an emerger, a soft hackle off the back. Since you're skittering, I thought, well, what the heck? I'll just drop that way back there, and picked him up on both. But I think that's a pretty effective way to do it. You just got to flip the hackle, like on the elk hair caddis, you're going to flip the hackle to get it to skitter. One way it kind of dives, the other way it kind of skitters. So y'all can look that up on the internet. I can't remember which is which. I think the hackle going forward is the skitter. So when you wrap it from front to back, you put it I want to say you put the shiny side to the back, but I'd have to go back and look at how we did that. It's just been so long since I've done it. And I think he had told me that that's where he used it, the first time, but I can't remember that either. It's been a long time. So I'm reaching way back in the Wayback Machine here. So
yeah, no, you definitely are. He was a good one, man. He will be sorely missed.
Yeah, absolutely.
He guided the clinch and the Holston primarily, and the shuttle driver and I had a conversation over on the clinch about him, and we both agreed that when he passed, man, there will be things that no one will ever figure out.
Yeah, last time I saw him, I was getting out at the Caney, and he was down there. He said, we're going to go just a little further, and then I'm going to motor back up. And I was like, well, you knock him out, I'll see you next time. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so the topwater bite is, to me, obviously, well, this from our time in the boat, but to me, that's fun no matter what. But it doesn't always happen. I mean, you can't will a fish up to eat your bug that's floating on top. But when it's not happening, so when it's not the most exciting thing in the world on that particular day, Jeff, give us just kind of give us some help on the most practical ways that you help your clients put trout in the boat.
So, and that's actually a pretty good question, or a pretty good topic. And it's one that I think we miss a lot. And I'm going to answer that by stating this. Keep it simple. And, a lot of folks don't really realize that even drifting a nymph sometimes, going back to skitter and a caddis, not all nymphs are static. Helping my folks get on fish typically means that there's a part of the process that isn't connecting. Okay. As you well know, I put a ton of action on flies.
Yes.
And so, I think it was Whitlock, Garak, size, color, shape, and then the fourth most important key to catching a trout is the action that you impart on that fly. When we're not doing great on surface flies because the presentation has to be really exact or the fish are really skittish, a lot of times what we will do is we'll drop straight to an emerger and we'll swing salt tackles. That's a great way to get folks into fish. You can do that in riffles. You can do that on flat water. I prefer riffles because the fish are a little bit spookier on flat water. And then, of course, nymph fishing is always a pretty good option on that river. Now, you may not be able to nymph pheasant tails and prince nymphs all the time, but there's a huge midge population on that river. Huge midge population. There's a huge crane fly population on that river. I've had some days where, thinking outside the box and giving somebody something super heavy to throw in the really fast riffle water, like big pats and even big crane fly larvae, and just putting them on the bottom has got folks fish. And it's a lot easier techniques. Think of easier techniques than simply dry fly presentations. And that's helped a lot of folks catch a lot more fish on that river for me. Even swinging boogers, you don't really even have to have sinking lines on that river. I mean, it's a lot of it is so shallow. The riffles are so shallow, and a lot of the places you're only looking at, even your buckets below your riffles. Some of them are only 3-4 foot deep.
Yeah.
Your heavier currents, put on a split shot or get them down a little quicker. It's fine. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that I think people who may not be able to be as exacting with a dry fly presentation can catch fish on the holes.
Yeah. And sometimes it just ain't happening. sometimes you can be really good at it, and it just ain't gonna happen that day for whatever reason. I guess if we do that, we'd be retired by now.
I blame barometric pressure and weather a lot, and I can't sit and tell you that I can prove any of it, but that's what I blame.
Yeah.
So
yeah, some days you have to run down the list, and that sounds good. Sometimes I think maybe they're just not hungry for whatever reason.
they ate too good the day before.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, we could use those. But that river, like I said in the beginning, we caught trout and smallmouth, and that river's known for smallmouth as well. I don't know that it's really well known for smallmouth. To me, it kind of is, but we caught some pretty decent smallmouth. But I know that we weren't really fishing for them. We were in trout mode that day, and that's just what we were going after. The smallmouth was, I don't want to say it was bycatch because it wasn't, but it kind of was. We look, oh, that's nice, and throw it back. So now I would, speak a different tune on that, or hum a different tune on that. But can you give us some help on the most practical ways to get the smallmouth? I know they're very similar, but boy, I sure would like to know some for my own knowledge.
We get smallmouth in that upper 19 miles of river, but really there's the lower end of that river from the confluence of the French Broad all the way up to into Mascot and into Blaine itself. It fishes and lends itself super well for smallmouth. I like to call it a smallmouth factory, believe it or not. I mean, there's always fish, in the early spring that are coming up to spawn, and so it's amazing as to the numbers of smallmouth that we see in that river every year. It really is. My favorite way to smallmouth fish, and I'll just tell you this, is a boogle bug, poppet bug. And I think 99% of the population who fish for smallmouth love topwaters, popping bugs, and so whether it be those or gurglers, or wiggle minnows fish shallow, it's a great way to catch smallmouth. Now, I had some troubles. You get into a lot of troubles in the early spring when the fish may or may not be super, super active.
Yes.
One thing I'm finding is I do a lot of nymph fishing for them. Small crawfish patterns, pats, big pats, hellgrammites, going back to crane flies. We've got all that, through the entire system. It's not like the hellgrammites just grow good in the upper 9 miles. They grow good throughout the whole river. Same way with crawfish. They grow good from the dam all the way down, So I guess some people will say that that's not necessarily what we ought to be fishing for trout, but I kind of think maybe sometimes a crawfish probably ain't going to hurt your feelings, So,
yeah.
But when things get really, really tough, man, I will downsize, and I will fish a lot smaller 1/8 to a 16th hair jigs under an indicator. I'll fish the nymphs that we just discussed under an indicator and run them through the deeper buckets. And I've been really surprised at what the result was. You got the floating fly that's being done on a lot of lakes like Bell Hollow and Lake Cumberland for smallmouth. And when you first get introduced to smallmouth fishing, that's what you think is, well, I've got to go throw a popping bug or I got to rip a streamer, And man, I'm going to tell you, we were fishing another river this past week, and I mean, a guy caught a walleye on a flipping pheasant tail.
Yeah.
So everybody eats bugs, and Holston is chock full of them. So, not to throw you completely off course here because you want to talk about smallmouth, but the one thing we didn't talk about was the mayfly population.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of 8-inch smallmouth I've caught on a size 14 sulfur. And so smallmouth are voracious little eaters. And so pay attention to what's going on around you, and you'll figure out pretty quick they're going to eat, and they're going to eat what's most prevalent. So whether it be crawfish or if there's an excellent sulfur hatch, I've caught them doing that.
Is the sulfur hatch one of the bigger hatches there as far as mayflies go?
It is. And May, June is your sulfur months, and it's the upper river. We've got there's 3 of them that are real. There's a pretty good size sulfur. And I don't know what subspecies these guys are, but there's a pretty good size one. Say you could throw up even a 14 or a 12 dry. Then there's your standard, which has got that more rich yellowish sulfur color to it, 16s, 14s, and 18s. And we've got one he's small. It may even be like a pale evening dun is what this thing may be, but it is 18s, 20s, and it is almost a lime green color.
No.
When those fish key on that guy, it can get really, really picky. I think the best thing I figured out how to do with those guys was 18 and 20 pheasant tails behind the actual dries.
Oh.
And so you wouldn't catch them on the dries very often, but you would definitely get them on the small pheasant tails coming up as an emergent.
Yeah.
So, but anywho, smallmouth. If you're not being very successful on smallmouth and you've tried streamers and you've tried popping bugs, downsize. Try getting something on the bottom in the deeper holes, especially on super bright days. If they're not, there's not a lot of shade trees for them to get under, you can normally pluck something off the bottom.
Yeah, where it's a little cooler. So I want to go back, let's go way back here just for a second. So does the water get too warm in June and it's put and take, or is it just warm and they're eating at night, or what's going on there?
As I said, Cherokee Lake is kind of a shallow lake. We don't have a ton of cold water to get us through our year. Normally by July, end of June, 1st of July, we'll start seeing the upper 19 miles get into that mid to high 60s range, and it is a put and take fishery. Theoretically or realistically, you can go in there and catch them until they're gone.
Yeah.
State's going to come in and put us some more in next year, right? There are some springs where I believe we get some holdover fish just because, we see them. We see high teens and high 20s or mid 20s fish off that river. And so those aren't just stocked, they're living there. And so you hate to see it in a lot of ways, but you know that the temperatures are going to get warm every year. And when they do, your fish are going to die.
But when we went there, we saw some fish that obviously were stockers. I mean, there's no doubt. There were some, and I think it was April. I want to say it was April, but don't hold me to that. But there were some that were like late in the year last year, it felt like. I don't know, October, November, something like that. But we saw some that there is no way that they were stocked within the last 6 months. I mean, they had to have held through at least 1 year, like a couple really big, nice fish that we saw. And we caught some really nice fish, nothing like I'm talking about, but I know that those fish are in there. But as many bugs as there are, it seems like that even if it was all stock fish, which I mean, freshly stocked fish, they're growing pretty dang quick.
I wish I knew the number. I do. I wish I knew what that, inch per month or, 3 inches per second, whatever it may be. I wish I knew that. But there is a tremendous amount of forage for these fish. And so, the fish that we're seeing that are being caught in the spring that are 14s, 15s, 16-inch fish, it wouldn't surprise me if those fish were stocked the November prior. The state does a pretty good job. They'll come in and try to stock. I want to say they keep a pretty good eye on the river temps, and end of October, 1st of November, I'm pretty sure they're stocking. So that gives them at least the winter, gives them 3 or 4 or 5 months to sit there and grow. And like I said, there's a ton of food in that river.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how they taste, but hellgrammites must taste pretty good because they will go after them like nobody's business. I've never eaten one, so I can't say that for sure, but they must taste pretty good. Crawfish, I do know how those taste. Those do taste good, but they take a little bit of work, where hellgrammite really chasing it down is probably the hardest thing.
Yeah, well, you got to remember too, we don't just walk up and eat the whole crawfish, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah. So a little
different.
Yeah, but still. And so that brings me, funny enough, that brings me to some food. So quick story, and I don't know that I've told this before, but there's a creek up there called Buffalo Springs. That's what it is. Yeah. So the first couple of years I started fishing when we lived in Knoxville, my friend Pat McCormick lived across the street. I know y'all all know that story, but he said, hey, one day he said, hey, let's go out to Buffalo Creek. And this is a unique day. So he had a 4-wheel drive truck. So we take off up to Buffalo Creek. I've got on tennis shoes, and there's about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches of snow up there. So we're tromping through. This was the exact moment we were on Buffalo Creek. I remember exactly where we were. And I thought, I'm going to the Cabela's catalog when I get home and I'm ordering some boots. That was my first decision that I made that on that particular trip was not where we're going, what we're doing, anything like that. It's like, I'm getting some boots. So anyway, we're walking down Buffalo Springs and I'm not seeing any fish there at all. So we walked a pretty good ways in my black tennis shoes. Then we went back to the truck and we were riding and we found this subdivision that had a ramp on it. So we went down and checked the ramp out. And I told Pat, I said, you know what I could go for, Pat? I could go for a nice steamed sandwich. And this is Sunday afternoon, about 4 o'clock. And he was like, you are not going to find a steamed sandwich out here, David. There is no place open. And we're 30 minutes to Blaine or something like that. And, an hour and a half to Knoxville. And with this snow, he, ran down a myriad of different reasons why I wasn't going to get my steamed sandwich. So I promise you, Jeff, we get back in the truck and we went in one way, in the subdivision one way. And then we hung out at the boat ramp for a minute and looked at the water and all that. And then we went out another way. And when we got back to the main road, there was a gas station there. And it had colored windows in it. And on the windows, it said trout, bait, and tackle, and sandwiches, and cake, and steamed sandwiches. And I said, stop, let's go in there. He said, I'm staying in the truck. I know that they don't have any. So I go in there and I'm talking to the lady. I said, do you have a steamed ham sandwich with cheese on it? She said, yeah, I sure do, honey. I was like, oh, okay, great. I felt right at home. Well, he come stumbling in out of the cold after a while. And he said, you have got to be the luckiest guy on this planet to pull out of here and find your steamed sandwich that you've been crying about all day. Well, first of all, I wasn't crying about it. Second of all, I had only sent it 15 minutes earlier. So anyway, we get there and she said, I'm going to throw this cake out because we're closed tomorrow on Monday. She said, we're closed tomorrow. I'm going to have to throw this cake out. It was like a 5-layer cake. It was huge. She said, y'all want a piece of cake? And I said, yeah, I do, after I eat my steamed sandwich. So anyway, we went and got us some milk out of the freezer or refrigerator thing back there, the fridge, and drank our milk, ate our steamed sandwich, or I ate my steamed sandwich. We had a piece of cake. It's a great day. We got back in the truck. It was snow all over the ground and a little bit icy. Fun ride back to Knoxville. We did some donuts in the church parking lot because, we were 40-year-old men, so why not? We get that chance every once in a while, but I don't know. There's some great food up in that area. There was also, so I went back to that place. Let me back up just a minute. I went back. I think it might have been the trip that we went on up there to fish the first time. After I moved to Murfreesboro, we went back up there and took some boats and floated it. And all I was thinking was, I'm going to get me a steamed sandwich from this place. I told everybody we were with, if this place is got them steamed sandwiches, that's what we're eating for dinner tonight. But the roof had caved in on this place. It's just an old block building with the roof caved in. But we found a little diner over in Blaine that had the little round seats on it that you sit at the bar and then they cook behind the bar. So everybody had a cheeseburger there. But so there's some really funky places over there. There were. I don't even know if they're still there. But so give us a 411 on where folks can eat if they go over there. It's going to be hard to beat those two.
It is going to be hard to beat. I'll promise you that. So if you're coming in from the Jefferson City side to go to the dam.
Yeah.
Okay. Before you take the left to go under the bridge, there's a little back road you can take. I don't remember the name of it, but there's a little gas station there, and they've got a really good breakfast biscuit.
Oh.
It's right off of the main highway, which is 25E, going from Knoxville to Morristown. Okay. So that's a good one. As far as a good eatery, I put people up, and this is going to sound terrible, but when people come up to fish with me and they have to spend the night, I typically try to keep them at a decent hotel where I know they will be safe, of which we don't have a ton of once you get into Blaine. Jefferson City, it's a college town. It's got go the little better option. There's a Pals.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But where I put my folks up, there's an Aubrey's, which is great. It's a local chain restaurant, and of course, it's pretty fancy. They've got a really good bar. But see, at that same exit, there's a Crystal. And so the idea is you can go get your fancy dinner, or you can go have your drinks at the bar. And when you're done, you can just shimmy right across the road to the Crystal, eat your dinner, and then go back and die and come up and go fishing.
Exactly.
You know, we've lost a ton of mom and pops up there. The one that I think you're talking about, it's been bulldozed. It's no longer there.
Oh.
Yeah. There's another little joint if you're going up Rutledge Pike, but you got to go past the turnoff by about 6 or 7 minutes. And so I always tell people to meet me at the Food City at Blaine, and it's we get breakfast there if they need it, and of course I'm doing lunch, so they're going to eat good for lunch.
Yeah.
So
yeah. To me, there's no comparison between Crystal and White Castle. White Castle might as well be White Claw to me, because we all know that Crystals are 100 times better than a White Castle.
Man, if Corey could hear you say that right now, we'd be fighting.
We would be fighting, but I'd be winning the argument. He'd probably win the fight because I'm too old, but I'd win the argument that we had a White Castle right down the road here, and it was awful. And the Crystal across town, I mean, I would drive past that White Castle every day to get a Crystal. There's no doubt.
If you grew up in the South, you ate Crystal.
Yeah.
If you grew up in the North, you ate White Castles.
Right.
And so I get it, but Crystal has White Castle beat.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So, yeah. So take that, Corey. And everybody else that's wrong about White Castle. So Aubrey's, I remember Aubrey's in Knoxville, because I used to go up in the Blaine area some too, but I don't remember what they had. What kind of food?
Yeah, so my favorite thing to get at Aubrey's, they offer a salmon taco. Okay. But what you do is instead of the salmon, you get them to make it with tuna.
Well, yeah.
And you get the tuna blackened.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Probably one of the best fish tacos that I've found around.
That's so much better than tilapia by 100%.
And then another thing a lot of my folks will do, you know, Knoxville is a big town, and it's literally, if you're fishing the Holston here, you can just about as easily stay in Knoxville because there's a lot more to do than just stay at a Holiday Inn off of a highway exit.
Yeah, right.
Some of the better stuff in Knoxville right now that we've still got around. If you're here for a couple of days, make sure to check out the Lunch House, which is over on Magnolia. It's a little local. Best chicken livers you'll eat, which is, I know that's a weird one, but they're mom and pop meat and three, and they've been around a really long time. They've got a phenomenal lunch. So I've got a real good friend that owns a bar here in town. It's called The Hill. He's doing wings better than probably 98% of the other wing restaurants out there, maybe even 100% of them.
Nice.
He's over in the Fort up on the hill there. Good cold beer, good food. And of course, the Knoxville restaurant market is huge. There's a lot of really high-end restaurants in Knoxville that you're going to spend a couple $100 to eat dinner there, but you get it catered to by private chefs. And it's pretty amazing with what we've got going on from the food scene in Knoxville.
That is. It's a long way from where it was. What is it, Sam and Andy's?
That was a good one, though.
Yeah.
But no, it's Knoxville, still Knoxville. You know, we've still got a football team, believe it or not. But we've got really good fishing not too far from it. I'm about 10 minutes to campus. My wife and I are. And so, I mean, just from right there, I'm 10 minutes to smallmouth fishing, or actually about 6. You know, I'm 20 some odd minutes up to the Clinch and Norris. So we've got a lot of good opportunities right here in Knoxville. So you're 30 minutes to the park. And I can keep going, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
You're really central.
For sure. So back to the Holston. I'll tell you where we stayed. We stayed at a state park up there somewhere. I don't remember where it was, but all I remember, we were sleeping in tents too. So I was much younger, and now I would at least have had a cot. But the coyotes, it could have been just 2 of them, but I swear to you, Jeff, it sounded like there were 50 that were just like right outside of the park boundaries. And I know they weren't. I know they were way up in a hollow somewhere, but That's what I remember. And I remember it being very clean and everybody was really quiet except for us until it was, time to go to bed. But it was a good place to stay. And I know there's some staying in Jefferson City is probably the next best bet. I'm sure there's some VRBOs up there, but
There's a couple. Panther Creek State Park was the one you probably stayed
Yep,
at.
that was it. Yeah.
I tell you, man, I've had a couple of folks bring RVs up. Or going to come to try to stay at that state park, or even there's right at the dam, there's a TVA campground.
Oh, yeah.
It is spectacular. I mean, it's clean, and there's a boat ramp to the lake on that side. The spots are really nice as far as, it's well maintained, well kept up. But man, you've got to just about make reservations a month and a half in advance to get into these places. And so most of my folks, if they're traveling through, they're coming up to spend a day or two and then they're gone, So a good clean hotel is really, really it's a good thing to have up here.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. I want to stay where it's nasty. That's not for me.
No, it beats the riverside, trust me.
So we're getting close to closing this thing out, believe it or not. But we always have one question that we ask everybody, and we get some really interesting answers. Like some people don't really want to tell about the one that got away, but we want to hear about the one that got away.
All right. So on the Holston. So growing up, I tournament bass fished, did a lot on a lot of lakes, caught a lot of different types of bass, caught a lot of largemouth, a lot of smallmouth, a lot of spots. But the Holston, my wife and I will take the boat and run up and fish just for a couple hours on a Saturday or Sunday when I've got a day off, right? And so we did that. Sun was bright, wasn't expecting a whole lot, but the shade was good. And a lot of fish had pushed up under my shade trees. And I was like, okay, so it's boogle bug top water fishing time. And so I had not ordered boogle bugs for the year because it was early, and I had one number 4 black Galaxy left. And I see a likely suspect. I watched him move. And when I watched him move, I put my boogle bug directly in front of him under a branch across 2 tree limbs. Okay. The fish come up and ate. I saw the fish. I knew it was a decent fish. I did not know how decent. When I set the hook, the fish come over the first limb. I was good. When I saw him, I knew I had probably the largest smallmouth that I personally have ever caught on a fly rod. My best personal smallmouth ever was an 8.5 that come off of Main Tennessee, down on below in Chattanooga on a spinnerbait, right? This fish, I'm guessing, was really between 5.5 and 6 pounds. He come out of the water, jumped over a branch, and I cleared it. I literally trolled the boat back upriver, come across the top of it, got around, and I'd be darned if he didn't hit me in another tree. I lost the fish and the popping bug in one fell swoop, and that was it. So I've gone back. I haven't found my popping bug.
That's insult to injury. You lose the fish and your bug, and your only bug that you have left.
I've started running a little heavier leaders
on your popping bugs.
On my popping bug rigs, yeah.
Now, I've got to where I just use 20-pound leader and 12-pound tippet, and that's it. Just whatever length.
I went from 8 pound to 10.
Yeah, close enough to the same. Yeah,
that one hurt my heart a little bit.
Yeah, I can tell. Still kind of weighing on you.
It's terrible.
Oh.
But we see good fish on the Holston. We see good trout. We see good smallmouth. It's a fun fishery. Long days, which I think a lot of folks kind of like, not a lot of great cell service, so you can get out and you can get away, which is really nice. I think that's important for folks.
Agree. And there's plenty of different types of water on that river to where you can enjoy you can learn a ton, especially if folks that'll listen to what you're telling them. If you really pay attention, you'll know how to fish at least 2 or 3 different types of water and be pretty good at it by the end of the day, because it is so long and it is so varied in the water types that are there. So definitely something to think about. So, well, we close this thing out.
That sounds good. I appreciate you talking.
Yeah, man. So thanks for joining us on this episode. Feel free to share this with your friends and fishing partners. Give us a positive review when you get time. Hit the like, click the follow button so you'll be keyed up whenever the episodes come out. Sign up for the Southeastern Fly newsletter and get a jump on our upcoming events. There's some really good, interesting things that are coming through the newsletter that are coming up. And that you get some discounts on some things and stuff like that. Your newsletter sign up is available anywhere you're listening to this. Just look down in the show notes and click on it. And I think it's just your email and your name. I think just your first name or first and last name, and that's it. It comes straight to us, and we add you to the list, and you get a couple newsletters a month on the podcast. So who was our guest today on this episode about the Holston River proper? He lives in Knoxville. I've spent a fair amount of time with him on a boat. Lived through a lightning storm with him on a boat. He fishes the Holston, the Clinch, and the Cumberland up in Kentucky. He's a good dude. Just a lot of fun to spend the day with. You can find him at sharpfly.com. Jeff, thanks for joining us on this episode, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. It was good times.
Yeah, you just listened to Captain Jeff Sharp on the Holston River on Southeastern Fly, and I'll see you next time.